So you bought Chivalry 2 having visions of being Aragorn, King of Gondor, carving his way through hordes of enemies, only to join a duel server and quickly realize that you're actually more of a Samwise Gamgee, a weak and unskilled hobbit. Stick around because today we are going to turn you into a dueling expert. If you want to become a master dueler, while Chivalry 2 has pretty good weapon balance, not all weapon choices are created equal, and there are some weapons that are more suited to dueling than others. In boxing, we have a very famous expression that power thrills, but speed kills. And this is very true in chivalry dueling. We want to stay away from the mauls and the Zweihanders. And the weapons that we want to use are the Messer, the long sword, and just the regular one-handed sword. These weapons combine speed with surprisingly strong damage, which you're going to need in duel servers where enemies tend to be more skilled and they also tend to run the meta weapons. The consensus seems to be that the Messer is the best weapon in the game, but I myself do prefer the longsword because I prefer the extra thrust damage. It has the strongest thrust attack in the game, and again, like boxing, I feel like linear strikes are better than wide looping attacks. The easiest way to win a duel is by being the only combatant with a weapon. Many times, Chivalry 2 duels come down to who was most effective in managing their stamina. Duels in Chivalry 2 with skilled opponents become a battle of attrition, where having stamina many times determines who wins. And the only mechanic in the game to build back your stamina, other than to stop fighting, is to counter attacks. To counter an enemy attack while holding block, you just throw the exact same attack right back them and you will gain stamina. This is always a better choice when possible than a riposte. Landing hits on enemies many times comes down to breaking patterns, and we do this by dragging and excelling attacks. Excelling an attack is where you make the attack land faster by moving your mouse in the same direction as the strike past the enemy. This causes the strike to land quicker. If two combatants start their attacks at the same time, the player who recognizes this and excels their attack at their opponent will land their strike first. The other way of breaking up your attack patterns is by dragging your attacks, and in this method, we're going to slow our attacks down, and this works very well with a heavy attack. To drag our attacks, we're going to move our mouse away from our opponent like we're swinging a baseball bat, hesitate for a second, and then drag it back into the enemy. This will greatly slow down the attack speed of the strike. Many times opponents will get confused by the drag and they will start their counterattack before your strike actually lands, and then they will catch a shot right in the head. To break the defenses of highly skilled players, you're going to have to trick them with feints and morphs. To perform a morph, you start one attack at the enemy and then quickly switch it to another strike. When an opponent falls for a morph, they will either break their guard or try to do a counterattack, only to have your attack land on them for damage. You can even chain together multiple morphs to create a really differentiated attack pattern, but be careful because you will use stamina doing this. In my previous video, I talked about breaking someone's guard by using a strike into a kick. This also works well the opposite way. If you've already landed a kick on an opponent, they will be waiting for it and ready. So morphing a kick into a strike is another effective way of putting damage on an enemy. Also, don't be afraid of using a stab, morph into a stab. I found this works very well also. Utilizing footwork is one of the most effective ways to get around an enemy's block. Many newer players like to just move directly straight up or straight back so that they keep their enemy right in their line of sight. While footwork is best used to close the distance and force your enemy to aim at your moving body. Blocking in Chivalry has a mechanic where you have to aim your block at the tip of an opponent's weapon. So I find many times if you move laterally in a kind of diagonal pattern towards the enemy, many times they will not follow your strike with their block, and you will move almost behind them and strike them in the shoulder or the back where their block is not covering. If you want to get really tricky, I've also found it very effective to run past your opponent and start your strike while your back is turned, and then quickly fling your mouse in the other direction to land a strike on a very confused and unsuspecting opponent. On the topic of breaking the enemy's line of sight to get around their guard, I love to use the crouch mechanic. In my last video, I showed where I used the crouch to then strike at the opponent's ankles and get around their guard. Throwing regular crouches into your dueling does many things, though. One, it makes it harder for your opponent to aim and hit you, as sometimes their swings will go over your head. When you crouch in intense close quarter duels, what winds up happening is your enemy loses line of sight of you. This puts the advantage of surprise or the initiative in your park. With this lack of vision, if you start your attack from your crouch, many times they won't see the attack animation start. And I like to then release crouch and put a stab right in the opponent's face. So that brings us to the end of our Chivalry 2 dueling tips and tricks video. Please let me know in the comments if there are any other Chivalry topics you would like me to talk about. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video. I will see you guys next week. Champ out.